Imagine a system so deeply embedded in society, so pervasive in its reach, that it governed nearly every aspect of life for millions of people for over 70 years. It controlled where they lived, what jobs they could hold, who they could marry, and even how they were buried. Such a system existed in the American South, and its endurance seems almost unfathomable today. Jim Crow laws and practices persisted for decades due to a powerful and interconnected web of legal mechanisms, economic exploitation, political disenfranchisement, and brutal social intimidation, all underpinned by an ideology of white supremacy. It was not a single cause, but a multifaceted system designed to maintain racial hierarchy and control after the formal end of slavery. Legally, the Supreme Court's infamous decision in Plessy v. Ferguson in 1896 provided the crucial framework. By establishing the doctrine of separate but equal, the court effectively sanctioned racial segregation across all public facilities. This ruling allowed states to legally enforce separation in schools, transportation, restrooms, and even drinking fountains, creating a society deeply divided by race and inherently unequal. Economically, Jim Crow enforced a system that kept Black Americans in a state of dependency and poverty. While slavery was abolished, practices like sharecropping and debt peonage trapped many in cycles of debt, preventing economic advancement. Black farmers and laborers were often denied fair wages, access to capital, or the opportunity to own land, ensuring they remained an exploitable labor force and limiting their ability to build wealth or challenge the system. Politically, extensive efforts were made to strip Black citizens of their voting rights, effectively silencing their voices and preventing any legislative challenge to Jim Crow. Tactics included poll taxes, which required payment to vote, literacy tests, often administered unfairly, and intimidating grandfather clauses, which exempted white voters whose ancestors had voted before 1866. This created an all-white political landscape where Black interests were entirely unrepresented. Socially, Jim Crow was maintained through strict racial etiquette, backed by the constant threat of violence. White supremacy was openly promoted in culture and education, reinforcing a rigid social order. Lynching and other forms of racial terror were used systematically to enforce compliance and punish any attempts to defy the established norms, creating a climate of fear that permeated daily life. Understanding the persistence of Jim Crow requires recognizing the sheer ingenuity and brutality of its design. It was a comprehensive system that utilized the legal system, economic leverage, political power, and raw social intimidation to maintain control. The Black Codes, for instance, were early laws passed immediately after the Civil War that heavily restricted Black freedoms and laid much of the groundwork for later Jim Crow laws, often forcing Black individuals into labor contracts that resembled slavery. This deep entrenchment meant the system was incredibly difficult to dismantle. The decades-long endurance of Jim Crow teaches us about the profound impact of systemic discrimination and the interconnectedness of legal, economic, and social forces in shaping a society. It highlights not only the resilience required to overcome such a pervasive system, but also the long shadow it cast on American institutions and social structures, whose effects we continue to grapple with today.